Today, the government is launching its gov.uk app. And while it doesn't yet do very much, the government is promising frequent updates, and it's a key part of the government's wider digitisation strategy, which is genuinely ambitious and interesting. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the new app, how it fits into this wider strategy, and what the future of government might look like. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Now, before we get into it, we should just say that there's a guy called James O'Malley who's done a number of great Substack pieces on the government's digitisation plans, which we'd recommend reading, and we've linked to down below. Anyway, let's just start by taking a look at the government's new app. Broadly speaking, the plan is for the app to essentially allow people in the UK to use gov.uk services on their phone. To keep the interface relatively minimal, you'll be able to choose which government services appear on your homepage, so you can access these services right away. To start with, there won't be that many services available. The government's press release only mentions managing childcare payments and travel guidance. But the press release also makes it clear that this is very much just the first version, and that the app will be regularly updated in the future. They describe it as launching in public beta and claim that over time new tools and functionalities will be added, including more services, the government's own AI chatbot, gov.uk chat, and notifications to remind citizens to do stuff like book their MOT or update their passport. Now, at this point, you might be feeling a little bit underwhelmed. After all, even if it's only a public beta, the current version of the app doesn't really do much, and you'd be forgiven for being somewhat skeptical about the government's claim that they'll eventually turn it into some kind of super app. But this app should really be understood in the context of the government's wider digital strategy, which is genuinely ambitious. The relevant document here is the government's blueprint for digital government, published by the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Peter Kyle, back in January. Now, it's a big document, but the basic central idea is pretty simple: to unify the government's fragmented digital infrastructure via a new task force called the Digital Centre of Government. To understand why this is such a worthwhile project, you need a bit of context. In short, when the public sector was first starting to digitise, a process that began way back in the 90s, individual government departments set up their own systems. This meant that you had different online systems for different government services. You had one online system for paying taxes, another for renewing your passport, and another for applying for a driving licence. Furthermore, some of these systems were contracted out to third-party providers, which added yet another layer of confusion and complexity. This was and is bad for citizens, because it means you have to remember a whole load of different credentials for a bunch of different systems, and re-enter your data multiple times into these different systems. But it's also bad for the government, because it means they've got a whole load of separate user information databases which don't talk to each other, which makes it harder for different departments to operate. If, say, the Department of Education needs to get students' medical data from the NHS, for instance, say to make sure that some child isn't spreading diseases to their classmates, this becomes more difficult than it should be, because these two departments use different systems and databases with no easy way of cross-referencing. This is why in 2011, the Conservative government set up the Government Digital Service, or GDS, an arm of the Cabinet Office tasked with simplifying the government's digital infrastructure. GDS was actually a bit of a triumph. They basically designed the gov.uk website, which is surprisingly easy to use, as well as functions like GovPay and GovNotify, which makes it easier for the government to, you guessed it, sort payments and notify citizens. GDS was way ahead of its time, and it's one of the reasons why the UK government actually has some of the best online services of any large country in the world. Now, this might be hard to believe, and gov.uk isn't perfect, but trust us, other countries have it worse. GDS was actually the inspiration for the United States Digital Service, which was set up by Obama and which became Doge early this year. And it's so good that the New Zealand government literally copy-pastes our code for their own government website. In 2023, GDS also set up One Login, which allowed citizens to have one login for various different government services. One Login has made good progress, and you can now use it to access a number of government services, including applying for a veteran's ID card, getting a DBS check, or finding a teaching job. But the big government services, like Universal Credit and HMRC's online tax system, haven't been moved over yet. Both because, well, they're pretty massive, and because if anything goes wrong, it could have severe consequences for the millions of people who rely on those systems. And this is where Labour's new plan comes in. Building on GDS, Labour's digital centre of government aims to complete this unification and combine all of these services into one easy app. The blueprint explicitly calls for the UK to adopt a once-only rule, whereby citizens only need to tell the government something once, and the burden is then on the government, not citizens, to share that information across relevant departments. The UK already has something like this in the Tell Us Once service, which you can use to report someone's death, but it hasn't been rolled out any further. Ultimately, the aspiration for the new gov.uk app is to create something akin to a Google account, which can then be used to log into basically any other service, with data automatically updating across all of these platforms when you change it in your main account. Now, if this works, and the prior success of GDS should provide some cause for optimism here, it could save both citizens time and save the government lots of money by reducing admin costs. Estonia's hyper-digitized state, for instance, saves the government about 2% of GDP per year. It could also help the government communicate better with citizens and give citizens a better sense of what the government actually does. You can imagine receiving a notification about a flood alert, for instance, or telling you that you're now eligible for some new kind of benefit. Of course, there are data-related and privacy-related concerns at play here, but it's worth mentioning that this blueprint doesn't demand new data from citizens. Rather, it's about collating pre-existing data to make government more efficient. The government could also take inspiration from Estonia, where citizens are notified every time a government department accesses any of their data. All in all, if done correctly, this could both save money and improve the relationship between citizens and their government. The next issue of our magazine, Too Long, is about to publish, and this time it's about the end of the American order. In that section of the magazine, we unpack everything from the collapse of democratic norms in the US to the decline of American soft power, and if the US can maintain its dominance in energy and technology, like if China, Europe, or even a new multipolar order could replace America. This magazine is our longest ever, coming in at 76 pages, and it's full of our very best journalism and well thought through analysis. That goes beyond just the US too, with more than half of the magazine dedicated to other topics, from Germany's new focus on military might, the offshoring of migrants around the world, how Nigel Farage could become Britain's next Prime Minister, or our section where we ask a handful of experts what's really driving anti-establishment sentiment around the world. You can pre-order a copy of Too Long from our website right now, or you can subscribe to make sure that you never miss an issue going forward. And if you do, you'll also get 20% off every copy as long as you're subscribed. Plus, just this week, if you use code AmericanOrder, you'll get an additional 20% off any subscription, bringing down the price to as little as £6.40. So pre-order a copy now to get yourself all of that extra content and support the journalism that we do here at TLDR every single day.